guys been?
Busy. Now we come find out what you guys do.
Cheers, yeah. So this is Coffee and Conversation. It's typically, it's educational in nature, so typically it's a guest speaker on our side. And it's like 45 minutes of like a kind of lecture style, then 45 minutes of Q&A. We're typically not like campaigning or anything. He was just in the middle of like a statewide tour, and they saw everything on mobile. I was like, hey, can you come to this? I'm like, sure. So it's normally not political, like this political. From like a constitutional law, someone from the state, somebody from CDC, and so like everyone just kind of gives their like full like pitch on what they do and hot topics of the day kind of deal. Yeah.
Well, I know you need to get started.
Yeah. Good morning, Cherokee Democrats. How we doing? Good morning. There we go. Guys, my name's Nate Rich, and I have the pleasure of serving as the chair of the Cherokee County Democratic Party. Thank you so much for thank you for spending your Saturday morning with us. We've got coffee and donuts in the back, so grab yourself a treat, and thanks for being here. We are so excited for a number of reasons, and you guys have seen me post incessantly on Facebook about the elections and the consequences that they have and the work that we're doing to make sure that we can flip the state legislature in 2026. We are thrilled to be wrapped up with candidate recruitment for 2026. We've got all of our state legislative candidates slotted. If anyone else jumps in the fray, lovely, but we left way too many seats uncontested last cycle, and so the promise we made is that is not going to happen again, and so we've done that. We've gotten that done. Yes. The reason I bring that up is specific to the election outcome that we saw on August 26th. And Deborah Shigley, who is the candidate for SD 21, outperformed by 10 points in Cherokee County. And that was the northern half. Yes. We expected her to do well. We can see kind of some national trends that are emerging. People are frustrated with Trump 2.0. There's just chaos seemingly in every direction, and so our base is mobilized. We're fired up, we're angry, and we want our country on the right track. So we expected to do well. Deborah overperforming by 10 points in the toughest precincts in Cherokee County was wildly impressive. And what I pointed out to the party within the last couple days was, what we saw with Biden was Biden notched 30.1%. I'm sorry, Harris, good Lord. Harris notched 30.1% in Cherokee County this past year. And so people were like, well, why was Deborah at 27%? Deborah was at 27% because she was in the toughest precincts where Harris got to run countywide, and we know our strongest precincts are the bottom 18 precincts of Cherokee County. So Deborah didn't get to capture that momentum from those bottom precincts, right? So if we look at that overperformance, we could make some guesstimations that we could overperform by 15 to 17 points next year. And so an overview of where our candidates landed last year. We had Danielle Bell in HD 44. She was just 6 points away. We had Michael Garza in HD 46, who was just 9 points away. We had JD Jordan, just 11 points away. James Shade in HD 22, just 10 points away. And so all of a sudden, we've got like 5 races that are winnable, that we can flip if we mobilize. The momentum that we've got going on right now, the reason this room is packed this morning, we got to keep that up. We're doing all the right work, we just haven't been doing it long enough, and so we've got our sea legs under us, and so we just need to execute. And the reason executing and making sure that we've got all of these races contested across Cherokee County is to make sure that we're activating Democrats in every corner of the county. And we need that for statewide elections. That is how we're going to win the governor's mansion and make sure that we are saying Governor Estevez in 2026 after Election Day, November.
Let's give Chair Richard a huge round of applause and the whole Cherokee Democrat team. Man, if anybody questioned whether Cherokee County would show up on a Saturday morning, they have not seen this room. Good morning, everyone. My name is State Senator Jason Estevez. I'm the proud state senator of Senate District 35, which is on the west side of Atlanta, representing parts of Cobb and Fulton County. And I am running to be the next governor of the great state of Georgia. And it is such an honor to be up here in Cherokee County, a county that has made great progress as we move to turn this state bright, bright blue. And where Cherokee County goes, the state of Georgia goes. And what the chairman just talked about was the fact that we have been overperforming in Cherokee County. And I don't want to call it overperforming. We've been performing. We've been doing the work, and it's because of the people in this room. So I want y'all to give yourselves a round of applause, because give yourselves a round of applause. Because this work does not happen without you. And that's what I want to make sure that before I go into my bio and before I do all the things, right? I want to make sure that you understand we don't win these races without you. Because people vote, right? We all have to vote. But y'all are the ones that are encouraging them, informing them, and activating them to actually exercise their right to vote. Without volunteers, without the people power, we don't win statewide. Without you, we don't win local offices. We don't win legislative seats. So it's important for you to keep your energy and your momentum going, even in the face of chaos and destruction. They want you to quit. They want you not to attend meetings like this. But it's you continuing to show up and show out, to speak up, and to fight that is going to make sure that we not only win this state next year, but we win back the White House in 2028. So look, a little bit about me. I'm tall. Yes. A couple of y'all commented on that. I am a husband to my wife, Ariel, who's a nurse practitioner. I am a father to my two young children, Jaden, who's 10, Zoe, who is 7, going on 17. And I am a small business owner along with my wife. We own an urgent care, and we also own 2 restaurants. We own an urgent care in Atlanta. We own 2 restaurants, the Flying Biscuit Cafe. Not all of Flying Biscuit, just 2 restaurants, just 2 restaurants. One in Columbus, which is my hometown, and one in Macon, Georgia. So we own businesses across the state. And I'm a lawyer, a recovering lawyer for you lawyers in the room. I'm recovering. I don't practice anymore. But my journey started long before that. It started in Columbus, Georgia, where I was raised by 2 parents who didn't go to college but instilled in me the values of hard work and giving back to my community. Especially my mom, who would always tell me to leave my community better than I found it, who would always volunteer and give the shirt off of her back to make sure that her neighbor had what they needed. It's those values that I took with me into the classroom, where my first job after college was as a middle school social studies teacher. And I met a fellow educator, and I want all my educators to put their hands up so we can give them a round of applause. Thank you so much to our educators for the work that you have done. I will tell you, all those things that I told you I am, being a teacher was the hardest job I've ever done. The hardest job. But it is also the most rewarding job that I've ever done. I taught 150 kids who were no different than anyone in this room. They were just as smart, just as willing to work hard. But because of where they lived, they didn't have the same kinds of opportunities. And I found that to be fundamentally wrong. And as a teacher, I did everything that I could to level the playing field for those kids. And it's that experience that I took with me as I went to law school, because I wanted to change the system. I wanted to make sure that no matter where someone lived, that they had the opportunities to thrive. They had the opportunities to succeed and live out their dreams. So I went to law school, became an attorney, eventually ran for office. I joined the Atlanta Public Schools Board of Education at a time when the school system had gone through a cheating scandal that was the largest cheating scandal in American history. We had broken the trust of students, of parents, of teachers, and the school system needed leadership to rebuild that trust and to put the school system back on the right course. We started by engaging community, by talking to parents, talking to teachers, talking to students about what really mattered. We redirected money from the administration into the classrooms, where the money could actually do the work that we needed it to do. We gave teachers the pay raises that they deserved. Because of the Great Recession, they had not received raises in over 5 years. We made sure to change that. Not only that, but we changed the funding formula in Atlanta Public Schools to make sure that the money went to the classrooms and the schools that needed it the most. We made sure that we were listening to our most vulnerable students, listening to our most vulnerable staff, and ensuring that they had the resources and the support that they needed. And because of the work that we did, collaborating together, working, staying focused on what really matters, those students, we took a school system that was graduating about 55% of those kids to now graduating more kids on average than the state of Georgia, 83% of our kids. And that work does not happen without people working together, without mobilizing parents, teachers, and students, all rowing in the same direction. But what I also realized is that there was so much work we needed to do, because I will tell you, Atlanta Public Schools is not perfect. There's a lot more work that needs to be done. But what I realized, and you educators in the room know this, we were relying on our teachers to do way more than just teach. We were relying on them to solve all of the societal and community issues that we have. Those burdens are placed on our teachers. If a child came to school with mental health needs, because we have a mental health system that's broken in this state, our teachers are expected to fix it. If a child didn't have a roof over their head the night before, then the school is expected to figure it out. If a child is hungry, not just with lunch, but breakfast and dinner, then our schools are expected to figure it out. I ran for the state senate because I believed that the state needed to do more to ensure that we can clear out those challenges that our teachers and our students face in the schools every day, so that they can ultimately focus on the one thing they're supposed to focus on, teaching. And so that when our students leave their communities and go into our schools, they can focus on the one thing they're supposed to be focused on, learning. So I joined the state senate, and I worked hard to cut down the cost of living so people could actually afford to live. I worked to reduce property taxes for Atlanta seniors. In fact, this year there's a referendum on the ballot that will cut $1,000 from the city of Atlanta, fortunately not in Cherokee County, but in the city of Atlanta, it would cut $1,000 off of the property taxes of seniors, working in collaboration with the school system. I was also a Democrat that worked with Republican colleagues to make sure that our property tax bills across the state were capped and that they would hopefully eventually start to go down. But I also worked to expand services around healthcare, ensure we were fully funding our education system, make sure that we were tackling things around transportation, issues around transportation, our environment. But what I found were Republican leaders who were distracted by the politics. People who were more willing to bend the knee to Donald Trump and talk about issues that divide us versus talking about issues that unite us. I'm running for governor because Georgia deserves better. Georgia deserves a governor that is going to stand up and fight against the chaos and destruction that is going on in Washington, D.C. Because Lord knows, if you stay silent and don't say anything, happen with our farmers. We've seen what's happened. Letting Donald Trump do what he doesn't help Georgia. We need someone in the governor's office that is going to fight for Georgia and put you ahead of the politics. But we also need a governor that's going to tackle issues that this state has been impacting people of this state for decades. Long before Donald Trump became president, we've had a housing crisis. Our education system has been failing. Our healthcare system is leaving too many people behind. We need a government that it will finally deliver for the hardworking people across this state. And I've gone from Savannah to Augusta to Macon to Columbus. We're going to Albany. We're going up to North Georgia. And what I've seen is that while we have a state that has made great progress, we've left far too many people behind. People working 2 to 3 jobs each just to make ends meet, yet they can't afford rent. They can't afford health care. They can't afford to ensure that their children have child care, which means they ultimately lose their jobs. I'm a governor that's going to tackle issues that this state has been forced to deal with without support from Republicans for decades. I'm going to start by tackling the cost of living, especially when it comes to housing, child care, and health care premiums. All of those things have gotten incredibly expensive. With housing, we have to kick out the private equity funds that have bought up all of our single-family homes. But not only that, we have to cut the red tape and make sure that we can make building homes cheaper. And when I say homes, I mean big homes. I mean tiny homes. I mean mid-size homes. I mean duplexes. I mean apartment complexes. I mean all kinds of homes. We have over 300,000 units that are needed just to meet the needs of the next 5 years. We need a housing revolution, and I'm going to lead that revolution. At the same time, we also need more affordable child care. Now, I know some of you in here are more seasoned than others, so it's been a while since you had a little baby. But child care today costs more than in-state college tuition. It costs more to send your child to daycare than it does sending them to Kennesaw State University. How do we expect our people to work if they can't afford childcare? And who does that impact the most? Women. I'm going to make sure we use our lottery dollars, over $2 billion of which are just sitting in a bank account, hanging out there, to open up the number of seats that we have in our pre-K programs, to ensure that we include three-year-olds, and to increase the number of scholarships so that people can actually send their children to childcare and they can actually work. I'm also going to tackle affordability around healthcare. Y'all, it goes beyond expanding Medicaid. And I know that's what us Democrats have been talking about for years, but expanding Medicaid is not the only thing that we need to do. We also need to make sure that we take care of the Affordable Care Act, which in Georgia is called Georgia Access. 1.5 million Georgians are enrolled in Georgia Access, Obamacare. This year, we have one in the back. This year, enhanced subsidies that over 1 million of those Georgians rely on to pay for premiums, are being eliminated because of the chaos that's going on in Washington, D.C. Georgia can go from 500,000 Georgians being uninsured to well over 1 million Georgians being uninsured. That impacts not only those folks who don't have insurance, it impacts you who have insurance, because it's going to make it more expensive for you to get your care. It's going to increase the wait times at hospitals, and it's going to increase the wait times at clinics all across this state. So we have to expand Medicaid. We have to make sure that we're making health insurance premiums cheaper, but we also have to increase the number of seats that we have at our medical schools, get more providers, not only physicians, but nurse practitioners like my wife, physicians' assistants, and we need to increase the number of free clinics that we have in rural Georgia and in cities across this state. The last thing I'll tell you before I go into questions is that we also need to invest in our future. I see some of our kids in here, and they deserve a brighter future than what we've had. And for the first time in about 100 years, parents and grandparents are worried about our future generations. We have to invest in a vibrant public education system. We have to invest in a technical college system that prepares students if they don't choose to go to college to get a good paying job. And for those who go to college, we have to go beyond hope and provide needs-based scholarships because there are working families all across this state that have the Hope Scholarship, but college has gotten so expensive that those students can't afford to finish. And Georgia is one of 2 states that does not have a needs-based scholarship. Georgia and New Hampshire. We also need to make sure that we're investing in your dreams. And as a small business owner, I know that our small businesses are the lifeblood of our economy, employing more than half of the state's workforce. I want to make sure that we treat our small businesses with the same love and support that Brian Kemp treats our big out-of-state corporations. That's why I've proposed $1 billion low-interest loan fund for small businesses across this state, because I know that the #1 barrier to opening your own business is access to capital. And if you go to Main Street of any small town in this state, it's not some big corporation that's revitalizing that town. It's those small businesses. It's those small businesses that need our support and need the state of Georgia standing strong for them. As governor, I'm going to make sure that this is a state not just to do business, but for you to create and grow your own. Y'all, here's what I'm going to leave you with. We have the opportunity to flip this state, but we need a new generation of leadership. One that is focused on delivering results for hardworking people across this state. We cannot fall for the same gimmicks, the same slogans, the same tactics of the past, because our people cannot afford to be left behind again. Donald Trump, right now, is causing a lot of chaos and destruction. And we have the chance to stop it. But it's going to take us being bold. It's going to take us delivering results. It's going to take us crisscrossing the state and not being afraid to go in red counties and red cities, just like we go into blue counties and blue cities. Go into Cherokee, just like we go into Fulton. It's going to take me doing the hard work. It's going to take you doing the hard work. But I'm confident that if we work together, if we organize together, if we stand up together, we're not only going to win this state next year, but we're going to change the face of leadership in this state for generations to come. So I want to thank you for being here this morning, and we'll entertain any questions you have. Thank you all so much. Oh. Yes, I'll do that. Okay.
You were talking about the housing cost and housing prices, which is very near and dear to my heart, because I currently have 2 adult children that are living with us because they both make a decent salary. My youngest son makes $21 an hour, which is not anywhere close to any kind of minimum wage. And he has very good health insurance, but he cannot afford to get a 1-bedroom apartment anywhere from here to Alpharetta because rents are as much as our mortgage is. And you did mention about getting rid of the private equity companies. I am assuming that would take legislation. Being that that's the case, how are you going to get people on the other side of the aisle to see reason? Because that's what it's going to take, is to get some of them to see reason.
Yeah. So thank you for that question. The question is about how do we get people on the other side of the aisle to address issues, for example, housing, where you have 2 kids living with you who make decent hourly wages, making $21 an hour, yet still can't afford a 1-bedroom apartment. And I will tell you that that is the case for people all across the state, not just in Metro Atlanta. I've heard the same thing, whether you're in Thomasville, Georgia, Savannah, Georgia, whether you're in Warner Robins. We're hearing the same issue, that people cannot afford to live. So what we need to do is increase the supply of housing. And that's why I said we need all kinds of housing, not just single-family homes. We need apartments. We need duplexes. We need big homes. We need small homes to ensure that people of all income bands can afford to buy or rent a home. Now, here's how we get the other side to do the work. And the first thing I will tell you is that there are Republican colleagues that I have down at the state Senate and the state House who understand some of these issues and understand that action is needed. But they have been paralyzed by the politics. Because Republicans have a trifecta, they have no incentive to deliver. The only incentive they have right now is to deliver results for their base. And that's what they do. They get a tax cut, they give a tax cut to the rich, they give a tax cut to certain corporations that have the highest paid lobbyists, and then they call it a day. They say, we're creating jobs, right? But what we've seen is that our workers, our workforce, is being harmed by that. Because while we're taking care of the employers, we're not making sure that we have a strong and healthy workforce. And a key to having a strong and healthy workforce is making sure that they could live close to where they work. And for too many Georgians, they have to travel long distances. So the way we do that is by having a Democratic governor that is going to stand up and fight with these legislators if they don't want to negotiate and pass common sense legislation. Now, I believe they will, but if they don't, there are a couple ways we get them to the table. One is through the budget. There are many ways that we can fund to fund affordable housing in the state through the budget. There's the low-income housing tax credit. There are funds that we can create through the Department of Community Affairs, that DCA, that would help us with incentivizing counties to build more affordable housing. But ultimately, if we don't use the budget and legislators continue to block, then we have to use the veto pen. And the veto pen is the most powerful tool that we have, because at the end of the day, what legislators down there respond to is whether they have the ability to get their pet projects done. And every legislator down there has a project that they want done in their community, especially when you're in the majority, because you have the power to pass legislation. So I'm going to have to make sure that we use every tool, we use the leverage of the veto pen to bring them to the table and to get them to agree. Now, if that sounds like that's hardball politics and, oh my God, how are we going to do that? Guess what? Brian Kemp is doing that to them already. We have to play hardball. We have to withhold their projects. We have to strike projects from the budget and make sure that they understand that we are here for the people of Georgia. And right now, the people of Georgia are struggling, and we have to keep them top of mind and deliver results. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the veto pen is how we bring them to the table. Question back there?
Me?
Yes.
Okay, so I just wanted to know, for people who are afraid that we won't have elections next year, do you have something that you could say on that? Because I honestly, I love hearing everything that you're saying,
Yeah.
but I feel like this MAGA regime is not going to allow that to happen. And I do have genuine fear that they're just going to do this full-on takeover by the time that elections are supposed to happen next year. I don't know that we'll make it that far. So what do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing we have to do is continue to show up, speak out, and fight against every little test that they're throwing at us. And why do I say that? What do I mean by tests? What we've seen in DC is a test. They are testing to see how outraged Americans become. How upset do we get in DC when you have the National Guard being used for politics? When the governor of Georgia is sending several hundred National Guard members up to DC to pick up trash, apparently.
They just took down the longest standing peace vigil. It's been up there since 1981. Why did they take it down? For a picnic.
Yeah.
The longest standing protest.
So the first thing we have to do is continue to stand up and speak out. The second thing we have to do is continue to sue the heck out of the Trump administration. Y'all, these lawsuits are not useless. They are extremely helpful. It's what Republicans have been doing for years. We have to continue to sue, and unfortunately, we have an attorney general who happens to be running for governor, who has been sitting on his hands to placate the Trump administration. The last thing we have to do is use every tool in our toolbox to fight back. The number one tool we have right now is our vote. That's why electing Deborah Shigley in a couple weeks is so important, because it sends a message. It sends a message that we are not going to take this sitting down. We are going to continue to stand up and we're going to continue to fight. So in the interim, what we need to do, speak up, speak out, litigate, and show up at these elections. And the ultimate message that we can send is next year when we flip states all across this country. Here and then there. Yes?
On that same subject, what I'm concerned about is hearing Donald Trump saying he wants to eliminate absentee voting. I mean, what can you do from your, because I even heard the Georgia representative saying, well, there is some fraud, there's fraud. You know, they did almost everything they could after 2020 to really scale down, you know, the time frame and everything for absentee voting. What can you do to make sure that we can still absentee vote?
Well, look, we need to, I'm against any effort to eliminate absentee voting. The reality, though, is that Republicans in the state use absentee voting more than Democrats do. So we have to keep that reality. And when you look across the country, Republicans are using it just as much as Democrats are. So it impacts their voters as well. Here's what we can be doing right now. I need you to be reaching out to your legislators. I need you to reach out to the Secretary of State. I need you to reach out to the governor. I think it's highly unlikely that in this state we eliminate absentee ballots. And I think that's important for everyone to understand. And it goes to your question, is that in this country, we don't have one unified election system. We have 50 different election systems. And within those 50 different election systems, you have thousands of election systems. In the state of Georgia, we have 159 counties that each control their own elections. They bubble up to the top, right? So we have to make sure that you're reaching out, that we're all reaching out to those elected officials, including myself, making sure that you're voicing your concerns about absentee ballots. We have to do that now. They have one legislative session next year to be able to potentially eliminate it. I think it's highly unlikely that would happen. Why? Because during the legislative session, those elections, those absentee ballots are already going to be printed for the primary that's happening next year. So I want to, anything is possible in the age of Trump. Anything. And we got to anticipate all of this. But it's highly unlikely that we'll see absentee ballots go away, especially this cycle. Sometime in the future, it may, but not when Jason Estevez is governor.
I think that they can't do anything at the federal level that would necessarily change how states or counties handle their elections. So no matter what Trump says, he says get rid of absentee voting. There's nothing that can force anything here. All it will do is get the people in charge who lick his boots, to do what he says. But it's not something that could be done at a national or state level. Anyway, if you go back to the presidential election in '24, and you ask 100 people why Kamala Harris lost, you'll get 100 different answers. And the biggest things seem to be people saying there wasn't a cohesive message, granted, even though everything she was saying was positive, Trump managed to just keep hammering her on 1 or 2 or 3 sound bites and replaying them endlessly. Bottom line is, Democrats have always said, if they go low, we go high. That has not worked. I don't want to ask, how low can you go? It really comes down to whoever your opponent is likely to be a Trump kiss ass, for lack of a better word. And how willing are you to remind people that, well, my opponent supports a bigoted, pedophile, xenophobic, transphobic, corrupt, whatever.
Yeah, look.
I know you want to get a positive message out, but I think that there are so many people who don't see that, who don't have problem with that side.
Yeah. And the reality is that we're gonna have to do both. We're gonna have to shoot our shots and we're gonna have to throw elbows. And I know how to do that because I play basketball. I literally played basketball this morning. And when I'm on the basketball court, I know when it's time to take the shot. I know when it's time to make the pass to your teammate. I also know when it's time to throw an elbow. That's how we have to operate when we're talking about politics in this state. There are times where we have to throw bows. And for too long, Democrats have not. We've opted to just a little push, a little shove. We got to start throwing elbows. And if they, well, I won't keep going, but we have to throw elbows. And if they escalate it, then we got to do more than that. And if they escalate it, then we got to go on top of that. We can no longer go by when they go low, we go high. That rule, unfortunately, has been thrown out the window. And we have to do what we can to protect our people. And in this state, too many Georgians have been left behind because of the antics of Donald Trump and the cheerleading and the silence that we see from our state Republican leaders. That has to stop. And the only way we stop that is by throwing bows and making sure we hit our shots. The last thing I will say before I move on is that I believe that Donald Trump tapped into something related to economics. He was telling you, your current economic situation stinks. I'm going to make it better. Do y'all feel better today? I don't. We are worse off than we were 7 months ago. And no matter how many times he's going to say that it's Biden's economy, this is his economy. He has wrecked this economy. He has driven small business owners out of business with tariffs. He's created tens of thousands of job losses with his cuts to the federal government. He's created tens of thousands of job losses by having the federal government not pay private employers. And as a result, we're seeing our economy go into the gutter. Whether you want to call it stagflation, inflation, depression, recession, whatever you want to call it, people on the streets feel worse off today than they were 7 months ago. And that's what we have to be laser focused on, because at the end of the day, people vote based on how they feel on their wallets. And I feel like that's where Democrats lost last year, by not focusing on that. 2 more questions.
Mine's not actually a question, it's a statement.
Yeah.
I really think the Democratic Party, I think Chicago's going to be the test. And I really think if it goes south, then the Democrats in the country and other people are really going to then show Washington and DC what we think of Trump. Because I have family in the Chicago area, that daughter-in-law and a son, they're my spirit animal. They have not missed one demonstration since Roe versus Wade was turned over, and they're not going to put up with it. And I really think that's going to be that's what that is for Trump. It's the test point. How much can I push a major Democratic area? How are they going to react? And how they react is how I think Democrats across the country will come back at them. At least I hope. That's my plan. I wanted to go to Chicago. My son said, stay home.
Well, I will tell you that we have to make sure that people protest. We have to make sure that we continue to stand up and speak out. We cannot get complicit. If we get complicit, then we failed the test. Because again, what he's trying to see is whether we become complicit. Because if DC goes okay, Chicago goes okay, is Atlanta next? Right? So we cannot let him normalize what he's doing. We cannot let him continue to march towards fascism and march towards a dictatorship. So we have to continue to fight. Last question. I believe you had it back there.
So this is really off topic of anything you've talked about thus far, but your balance between corporate regulation and opportunity, right? For example, data center deployments in the state of Georgia and other revenue situation, right? And I'm just using that as an example, but what is your game plan around that? What is your structure around like the balance between the corporate regulation constraint with regard to environmentalism and to the working class versus opportunities that they produce whenever they come here?
That's right. And look, I should say that I'm a regulatory lawyer. Regulatory and litigation work, I've been doing that for nearly 2 decades. So I understand as a regulatory lawyer, what that means is I help companies comply with the law, whether that's federal law or state and local law. So I understand the balance between regulations and needing to protect a community, or protect people, and the potential to stifle innovation, stifle the work that these companies are doing. So I understand what that balance is, having represented Fortune 500 companies across the country. What I'm not for, and what we're seeing, is the state of Georgia providing handouts to companies. These are handouts. This is money that these companies are receiving for coming from out of state and coming into Georgia. Billions of dollars. And then while they're here, each one of you are seeing your costs go up because of what they're doing. Data centers is a perfect example, where they are getting a handout to come to the state. And then when they go to Georgia Power to get connected to the grid, Georgia Power spends hundreds of thousands and sometimes millions of dollars to do it. And instead of charging the data center, whose rates go up? Your rates go up. You are paying for the infrastructure that these data centers need to operate. And as the gentleman pointed out, for a 1 million square foot data center, you're probably employing 20 people. Right? So here's what I'm about. I'm for making sure that we have a business environment that is friendly, where we cut the red tape, where we don't make it hard for companies to operate. Why is that important to me? Because as a small business owner, I've had to apply for business licenses and all kinds of certifications in cities across this state, whether it's Macon, whether it's Columbus, whether it's Atlanta. And I want to make sure that we don't have red tape because it impacts small business owners. It impacts those big businesses that are trying to help create jobs. So I understand that we do not want to do that. At the same time, all of the burden should not fall on you. All of the burden should not fall on you. If someone wants to invest in this state, then I want to make sure that they actually invest in the state and its people, its workforce. So if we're going to give a Hyundai billions of dollars in handouts, then we need to make sure that they hire local. We need to make sure that they're hiring you. And what we've seen is time and time again, this governor has handed out billions of your dollars and it has not held these companies accountable at all. And what do some of these companies do? They take the money and they run. So my answer to you, sir, is that there is a balance between cutting the red tape, making sure that we're making Georgia as business friendly as it can be, while at the same time not continuing the years of handouts that we've seen from Republicans in the state. If anyone should be getting the support of the state, it should be the hardworking people of this state who have seen their health care cut, have seen their child care get more expensive, have seen their housing get more expensive. My focus is going to be on workers. It's going to be on making sure that our workforce is healthy, strong, and vibrant, so that those companies that come in actually have someone to hire. And if you ask any of those companies, they will tell you that the number one issue they have in Georgia is workforce. So we have to make sure that we're investing in our people. We have to make sure that we're investing in our workforce. And I think that's the balance that we can strike that will not only allow us to compete across the country, but will make sure that people across the state, regardless of where you live, have the opportunity to thrive, regardless of who you are. Thank you all so much for having me. I look forward to sticking around and hanging out. But most importantly, I'm someone that understands that this is not just about me. This is about making sure that we win up and down the ballot. So I want y'all to stay behind after today's meeting and knock doors for Deborah Shigley. Because if we flip this seat, ooh, y'all, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. I get goosebumps. If we flip this seat, we are going to send a message not only to the capital of Georgia, but to the capital of the United States, that Georgia is on the rise again, and that we're going to flip this state come next year. But we have to do the work to send that message today, which is why I'm here. And it's interesting. I think I've been the only gubernatorial candidate to knock doors for Deborah Shigley. But I understand that this is just not about me. We don't win races by just focusing at the top of the ticket. We win races from the bottom all the way up, making sure that the county parties are doing what they need to do, making sure what our candidates are doing what they need to do, making sure that grassroots organizations like Indivisible, like the NAACP are doing what they need to do. All of us rowing in the same direction. Thank you all for having me. I'll turn it back over to the chair.
Alrighty, guys. Deborah is going to be here in just a few moments. They got tied up in traffic. My challenge to everyone, and Jason hit the nail on the head, we need people knocking on doors. Deborah did not overperform by 10 points just because she's a stellar candidate, although she is. She's one of the best we've ever had. Our operation, we had hundreds of people knock on doors over the last 2 months. Elections aren't won by accident. It's done by hard work. And so if this is your first time at a meeting, first time at Coffee and Conversations, you've never done anything political before, we'll send you out with somebody that's experienced, that they know what they're doing. It's easy, but we got to knock doors. 30 more days, we're almost there. So before we break, we want to get a photo with the state senator, and then we'll be good to go. And I'm sorry, meet and greet as well. Mingle. Perfect. All right, everyone, come on up front.
Everybody up here, we're taking a group photo with soon-to-be governor. I'm Stephanie, remember we met? Good to see you. You need to be in the front, Mary. No. The seat's in the front. Get behind you. That's what I'm telling you.